All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Yogesh Chavda. I'm the founder of Y2S Consulting. Um, we work basically on helping brands operate in stigmatized industries. And today, we are actually going to have a repeat customer, let's call it that, where we have Emma Roloff from Roloff Consulting back again to kick off our season 2 for this particular podcast. So, Emma, I'm so delighted to have you back. I
Well, thank you
really
for having me back.
Oh, you completely won me over when we were talking about social selling last time. I found the knowledge that you shared incredibly useful. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes just to kind of like quickly recap what we had
Sure.
talked about the last time before we get into the to this part of the show where we're going to talk about social selling and artificial intelligence, right? So you talked a lot last time about what is social selling and the importance of basically starting basically. That was really the
hmm
big part that I took away from you in terms of you have to start somewhere and you have to go through a learning curve. And it's okay if you make mistakes, but those mistakes basically provides an authenticity about who you are as a person, right?
Oh, definitely.
Right. And I think there was a couple of statistics that you shared last time, which got me thinking a lot, basically, right? So things like, the importance of education at the top of the funnel. 2/3 of people basically look at that online content, and that helps them kind of like progress down the funnel a little bit, let's say. And as you help them take their question that may be ambiguous, and if you partner with them and help them make it more clearer, that's what really gets them to wanting to work with you. And I found that just that insight there is so incredibly helpful in positioning the role of social selling in the context of the funnel and things like that. Basically, did I capture all those things correctly? Let me
I
start.
think you did. You got a good recap in there. We could go back to it, but it would probably take up the whole time that we have. So people can go check out episode 1. We'll call it that, the
Yeah,
first conversation, and then after we're done here today.
absolutely. So the first thing I want to ask you is, talk to me about how artificial intelligence is starting to play in the space of social selling. Let's start with that question.
So I actually made a post on this yesterday because the same question I got asked on a podcast recently.
Hmm.
And I would say my viewpoint on how AI is going to change social selling and content creation
Hmm.
is really this like thirst for that authenticity that you just talked about.
Hmm.
And when you start to leverage AI too extensively, and we'll get into this kind of like do's and don'ts and like kind of finding that balance, it's a wonderful productivity tool, but it also has the opportunity to strip your essence completely out of what's being created
Hmm.
and kind of create this cookie cutter of content that's going to inevitably flood our news feeds and blogs and all of the rest. And what's going to stand out is the people that still keep the personal side in their content.
Hmm.
And that's not to say that there isn't a way for you to use ChatGPT or these clip makers or any of these types of tools that are available to us that are leveraging AI to speed up our content creation process. But you should always be at the center of it. And I think the biggest thing that we're going to see is almost like AI content fatigue. And when I say this, I know from conversations with friends of mine and people that I know, we all know when we see a LinkedIn post that's come directly from ChatGPT. I
Hmm.
know exactly what shows up. I've played around with the tool enough that if you type in, I would like a LinkedIn post that talks through X, Y, and Z, it's going to come back with a very specific format because that's what ChatGPT believes a LinkedIn post should look like. It's going to be littered with emojis that like kind of make sense, but don't quite make sense.
Hmm.
And your voice is going to be missing from that content. There's the opportunity for you to create images and do video content where it's dubbing over your voice. Aside from using it to maybe like translate your content,
Hmm.
you're going to lose who you are. And it's not a winning strategy to leverage it for your entire content creation journey or a winning strategy from a business perspective to lean too far into using these tools, because you're just going to sound exactly like everybody else because you're using the same large language models that are building everybody else's content.
So, do you feel though that you see in terms of what they write, that you can actually create your own voice with these tools and whatever? I don't mean there's obviously literally, but also figuratively as well, in terms of like the style of how your writing happens or whatever. Uh,
Mhm.
is that actually turning out to be true? I haven't tested it yet on ChatGPT or anything to see if there are differences or not, but I'm just curious to see what your experience has been from that perspective.
You can definitely tailor what the output looks like with good prompt engineering.
Right.
Um, you can ask it to change the tone. You can ask it to do, a more casual approach, or, make it more business. You can coach the AI through your prompts to take what the output is and tailor it and move through the process of getting it to learn your style. And
Mhm.
if you are consistently using the same chat window within ChatGPT to do that, it will theoretically be able to learn the context along that string, and you could iterate more posts with that same voice and same context moving forward. But
Mhm.
then I argue, what's the point of using it if you have to spend so much time tailoring it to get it to sound like you? You're putting in the same amount of time and effort to tailor this model to be able to sound like you as you would to just create the post yourself.
Right. Right.
So I think that there's a trade-off of when, and sometimes like, and I can share, my own content creation. There's times that I'm like, I know this would be a great idea. I know that I want to create something, but my brain is just dead for the day.
Mhm.
I will go into ChatGPT and dump out what's in my brain and say, help me come up with 5 titles on this topic. Or maybe I will do something like, help me create a post about this. Or there's been times where I'm like, give me a video script, and it will come back with something that I would never create or put out on my own,
Mhm.
but it does enough to get my own creativity and like the brain juices going for me to say, that's what I needed. I needed that brainstorming partner to help me figure out what's the piece of this I'm going to take out and create a video from there. Um, so that's where I think it becomes really valuable, is to use that that brainstorming power and use it as almost like an assistant. If you had someone in the room that's like, okay, we want to create this video, you
Yeah.
don't need to have that person with you. You've got ChatGPT to do it, or whatever large language model you prefer, but you've got that brainstorming partner, and then you take it and you add your own flavor on top of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, JP's just commented actually. I'll see if I can bring it onto the screen here. He talks about the fact that by the time you've coached it, it might have actually forgotten the initial text and the outline that you're trying to write out, basically. So there
Oh,
is a bit of a trade-off
100%.
there, right? So
Yeah, you've taken it
yeah,
down this path where it forgot the original prompt that you gave it. So you're going to have to go back and give it the original prompt with the full context of everything you've trained it on to
yeah.
get it to give you the original output that you were hoping for or looking for.
Right, right. So that's one area where, like, it's almost like a do's and don'ts in a way, right? In terms of
Mhm.
what you can do and what you can't do, right? What other areas have you considered using AI tools to help you and I use the word social selling very generically here because there's
Mhm.
obviously so much underneath that, of course. But I'm just curious to see what other avenues have you pursued it with, basically.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest use case that I've found to be really valuable is for repurposing content.
Hmm. Okay.
So put the put the name of the tool that you want to use in there. I think there's Lately AI that helps repackage content. There's tons of clip makers. I've played around with a number. My favorite one is Video AI. I think it came up during our last conversation too,
Hmm.
um, where you're taking content that's been created and available, like a longer form, like we could take this video when we're done with it and
Yeah.
input it into one of those tools, and it will come back with a number of clips that have been generated for us
Hmm.
that rank the effectiveness of capturing an audience. So like when you put it in, it comes back, it gives you like, we've created 15 clips from your video, and you give it the criteria of, I want it to be under 60 seconds so it can go to every platform, or I'm specifically creating TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, and you choose like, assuming it's a landscape video like we've got now, you can create like the shorter content for like more short form. So you coach it on what you're looking for, and then it creates these clips for you. And those clips have a ranking of like, this one's a 98% effectiveness for capturing attention because it's got a strong opening clip, you know, so you can kind of like go through and be like, okay, that one's a 54. Like, do I want to spend my time looking at that one? I would say like personally, I still spend a little bit of time tweaking those and like determining exactly how long I want the clip to be, adjusting exactly what's in there, because sometimes you'll get stuff that again is just like, I wouldn't post that. But what it does do is it speeds up the process of you having to sit down and review the entire thing and go in and manually edit these clips. So again, going back to adding the efficiency of you being able to move through that process.
Right.
It's also a really good democratizer of being able to create content, because you don't have to be a video editor to do that. You can use a low code tool like that, or, you know, like a really no coding, like a platform like this, where you're coming in, you're creating, you're just spending the time focused on the conversation. You take that output and you have something do the edit for you in the background. You can create a ton of content that way without having to be a video editor.
Amazing.
So like that's like a good, again, whether you're massaging it and moving through that process afterward, it's still saving you a ton of time to get there.
Right.
There's, you know, and then when you get into some of the additional pieces, like those tools typically have like a description tool that's using AI to try and give you a description. I'm typically not super in favor of that. But what I would say is another use case that I've done is taking video transcripts and feeding those into ChatGPT. So like I have a weekly interview series. In that weekly interview series, I have a very standard YouTube description that starts with a blurb of who the person is and what we're talking about. And then it goes through and timestamps the video with like the points that you'd want to watch. And then maybe there's the bio from the person. What I will do is after that interview is completed, I will take the video transcript, and I have, again, going back to what I said, like a consistent chat with ChatGPT where I say, following the like layout and tone and voice of the samples that I have shared with you, I want you to create the opening paragraph that details who the guest is and exactly what the conversation is, and pull out the questions. The timestamps I don't trust, even when you give it the transcript. I'm always checking that. But again, it just gives me like a very concise statement that took me 15 seconds to create, as opposed to spending time like thinking through exactly how I'd want to phrase that. There's still manual work needed, but it speeds up the process.
Right.
So looking at where those areas are that you can offset manual work that's needed to speed yourself up and add efficiency to the content creation journey, I think is a really great way to look at using these tools.
Amazing. So there are a couple that you mentioned right now. Are there? So I've used one, for example, where I've used ChatGPT to help me even think about what should my content strategy be for the next, say, quarter, right? So I do my weekly post, for example, on brands and in stigmatized industries. Not that I don't have ideas of what to write about, basically, but I still use ChatGPT to help me say, okay, if I want to do this consistently over, say, 12 months, how do I do it in a way where I'm actually helping advance the understanding while at the same time kind of like keeping people grounded in the fact that not everyone's going to see every piece of content that I put out there. So I've used it from that perspective. Have you tried it that way at all or not? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I've certainly seen people going through that process. I have a little bit more of I would say like with my own content journey, a laissez-faire, like what's striking me at the moment
Yeah.
approach to it. I have categories of like what I'm posting. So going back to kind of like what we teach people, and you could use this mentality to
Mm.
create a content calendar through ChatGPT. But like for me on Mondays, I do my newsletter. So, like, that content is a set category in my mind. On Tuesdays are my weekly interviews. On Wednesdays, I'm typically promoting something else that I've been a part of, like a podcast or something along those lines. And then Thursdays is to promote my monthly live stream. So, I've got this content like bucketing in my mind.
Yeah.
But you could take that idea of I want to stay consistent 5 times a week with these types of posts. And here's information about my niche and my focus.
Mhm.
And here's like big content pillars for me.
Right.
Now create a schedule for a monthly content cadence would be a really powerful way to do that. The other thing that you could do is provide, and just like generally a prompting hack, I would say, for anybody that's watching,
Mhm.
is to also present that information and then say, ask me 5 to 10 additional questions that you would need for me to create a content calendar that supports best practices of high performing and high converting influencers. And
Right.
then it will come back with additional questions where you can do that brain dump, kind of again train it on exactly what you're looking for, and then it would give you that output. So that like that kind of like ask me additional questions is a
Mhm.
really great way of prompting it to help make sure that it has all the information that it needs to give you a really high powerful or like a high impact response.
Do you feel then, with what you just said, right? I'm almost wondering whether leveraging these kinds of AI tools alongside, your own content, that you want to put out. Do you feel it's more effective right now in a B2B space, or do you see this also working very effectively in the B2C space as well? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I would say most of the people that I actually see doing like that kind of content calendaring
Yeah.
and like kind of hacking it are people that are in like the B2C influencer space, because
Okay.
they have to have really, really like if you want to be a TikTok creator
Yeah.
and hit high like follower counts, the best practice is that you're creating 3 videos a day. If
Oh
you're
wow.
creating 3 videos a day, you've got to have a really tight and concise schedule of exactly what you want to get across if you want your content to convert. So like if you're like that platform side of things, or like same with like Instagram, they'll tell you that you should have X amount, and I'm not as well versed there, but X amount of stories, X amount of static posts, X
Yeah.
amount of reels. If you're
Mhm.
creating content at that kind of high churn,
Yeah.
that's typically more in the B2B space where you're looking to build these massive followings on those kinds of platforms.
Mhm.
In the B2C or that would be the
That would be
B2C
to see.
space.
Yeah.
In the B2B space, if you're leveraging a platform like LinkedIn,
Mhm.
posting once a day is sufficient. And if you have a content calendar that you're building out, maybe you don't need that kind of high output generation the same way that somebody who's building on a different platform does.
Mhm.
I think it's still a valuable approach in either bucket, but I would say actually where I see it more prevalent is in the B2C space.
Got it. So, have you seen brands, for example, that are leveraging AI tools like the way you're describing it? Are there any best-in-class examples that you could potentially share with us today?
Ooh, it's hard because unless you're directly involved, you might not realize that they're doing
Of course. Yeah.
anything leveraging AI.
Yeah.
But I would guess any company that's got an internal marketing team that's doing content creation for them, they're likely leveraging some tools.
Right.
Um, I mean, even we could make the argument that StreamYard, which is the platform that we're in right now,
Yeah.
is technically an AI enabled tool, because if we wanted to, we could turn on captioning.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing where there's
Yeah.
AI and there's intelligence operating in the background. So it's a big question, but again, I would say if you find a brand that is creating a lot of like a lot of video content,
Hmm.
they are likely using some sort of AI tool.
Right.
And then even if you look at scheduling of content and tools like Hootsuite or Buffer,
Hmm.
they all have their own sprinkle of like rewrite AI that's in there. Or
Hmm.
LinkedIn just rolled out AI rewrite this, I think almost this week. Maybe it's been a little longer and I just didn't notice it, but
Yeah.
they've rolled out their AI rewrite. So again, like we're going to see probably every brand in some capacity leveraging AI in their content strategy,
Hmm.
where I would say you're still going to have like maybe some people using it and some people not, is in the individual influencer, individual creator space, where
Yeah.
there's people that have fully leaned into it and then there's people that are a little bit further back.
Actually, LinkedIn has done a couple of things. The rewrite is one part, which is actually on the text side. But if you're creating a newsletter, for example, you can put an image at the top, so you can have as for your particular newsletter or for that particular post, you can actually have LinkedIn system design the image for you. So you can actually
Okay.
upload a picture, and then it can take that picture and actually redesign it in the context of its software. I found it actually pretty interesting. I've actually tried it a couple of times. My last couple of posts that I've done actually came out from the LinkedIn AI image generation, as opposed to me typically being the one going into finding a stock image or whatever to
Mm-hmm.
help me create some sort of visuals. But it's interesting to see how LinkedIn even has advanced it on both fronts, the image side as well as on the text side as well. So
Which honestly, I think is an interesting move from a platform perspective. They have to
mhm,
do it because they don't want to be left behind. But
yeah.
it also has the potential to standardize the feed. And if people lean too far into these, everything is going to look the same and
Mhm,
time on the platform is going to drop.
yeah.
And that's, when you look at like social trends across the board and kind of the ebbs and flows of platforms,
Mhm,
Instagram was it. Instagram was the platform. And there were all of these best practices and gurus of how you make your feed aesthetically pleasing and how you do these things to like
mhm,
really perfect the Instagram feel.
yeah.
TikTok is a direct response to the fact that Instagram and all of the influencers started to look exactly the same.
Mhm,
TikTok grew because of the authenticity and the rawness of the content that was created there and
yeah.
people wanting that raw, authentic content. And
Mhm,
now you're starting to see that bleed a little bit more into like how people talk about Instagram and like your reels are supposed to be a certain way and maybe you shouldn't have a monotone color scheme and maybe you shouldn't worry about exactly what your feed looks like. You
mhm,
should worry about connecting with people authentically. And
yeah.
so there's going to be, we're going to keep seeing this balance go back and forth over the next couple probably years realistically as we all figure
Yeah.
out how to navigate this. But that's the piece that's interesting to me as we see these platforms roll out these capabilities that have the potential to standardize and create bland uh, news feeds that don't capture and maintain the audience on the platform for a longer
Mhm,
period of time.
mhm. Yeah. So, there are two big themes that I'm hearing from you right now, right? One is basically, make sure you have your personal voice be part of your content. And that actually is connected very closely into the second point, which is about authenticity.
Oh yeah.
Because, if you're not going to be authentic, you're going to get lost again. And you become part of what I call the sea of sameness, right? Where
Mhm.
all the brands look and feel almost the same, right? And even though we talk about brand differentiation as being a core part of marketing and branding, but because of these tools, you could actually lose that differentiation point if you're not careful in terms of how you come across
Oh
in your
gosh, yeah.
communication, right? So
Yeah.
I find that actually very fascinating because I think from a brand building perspective and from a brand positioning perspective, using these kinds of tools have to be actually enhancing that kind of voice that you want to have, right? If you want to be bold, or if you want to be conservative, or if you want to be, playful, how is that actually going to come through authentically in your tone of voice, basically. And are the AI tools able to do that for you or not? I guess becomes the question, right?
Yeah. And again, they're going to improve over time.
Of
So
course.
going back to JP's comment, like a year from now, will we feel like ChatGPT forgot the original prompt and the original ask? Or
Yeah.
will its intelligence increase where it gets to the point where like that's no longer a challenge that we're running into?
Hmm.
Or video creation
Yeah.
is advancing really quickly.
Yeah.
But then there's, we've got 5 minutes left. I won't go down that. But like, do you actually want to come to the point where you are creating an avatar where you're giving your likeness and your voice and
Hmm.
potentially opening up yourself to anybody using that likeness or voice to create content? And there's the deep fake side of things. And there's so many directions that we could go with that. But
Yeah.
there will become a time where we likely aren't going to be able to tell the difference between me talking on this video feed and somebody creating a video feed using my likeness and my voice to create that content. And at that point, again, it's going to become, how do you use those tools to authentically interact? And we're seeing, Instagram rolling out these celebrity AI generated, like you can chat with Kendall Jenner's like alter ego, and she positions herself as like your big sister. Go ahead and ask me questions.
Hmm.
It's her likeness. They've created a deep fake that will respond to you and interact with you so that you feel closer to the celebrity and you're interacting with the celebrity, but it's not actually her. And they don't call it Kendall Jenner, but it looks and sounds like her and gives you advice like she would.
Yeah. Well, there are other tools as well, right? I saw this on my Instagram feed just a couple of days ago. I think there's a tool called Replica, where you can have your own online girlfriend or boyfriend,
Mhm.
and you have like an avatar, and you can basically, choose, what do you call it? Like, what kind of profile you want, and the look and feel of that avatar, and you can actually have a conversation. And I was looking at it and thinking, like, my gosh, that's interesting. And from a social selling perspective, bringing it back to that point, are these kinds of tools suddenly going to become like, a way for, like these avatars will say, hey, have you thought about buying this? Or, it just opens up some really interesting spaces in terms of how are these tools going to influence your behavior or your mindset to act and do something in the real world, in a way.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
know. What are your thoughts on that? I know we're running out of time here.
No, I think
In a minute.
these are for lack of a better term, the black mirror moments that people fear when we talk about AI.
Right.
And whether it is the business use cases of AI, where we talk about ethics tied to bias and discrimination,
Yeah.
there's just as many, if not more, social ethical dilemmas that as a society we need to move forward with over the next number of years.
Yeah.
Because, like, and not to, but like, just even thinking about like person to person relationships, if people are, as teenagers when they're awkward and don't have their first boyfriend or girlfriend, opting
Mhm.
towards an AI to find that companionship, what does that mean for their ability to go out and find a partner in the real world as an
Right.
adult?
Right.
What does it mean for, again, for us and trust and like as a society, if we don't ever know that the video feed that we're seeing of our politicians is real or fake?
Hmm. Hmm.
How can these things be potentially used by bad actors in a different way? Because bad actors are typically a couple of steps ahead of us in
Yep.
terms of innovation because they're not afraid to try stuff and break things.
Yep.
So like these ethical questions and these dynamics are only going to become more and more important as a society for us to work through and figure out, whether it's in that business setting or in that personal setting.
Hmm.
And there's going to be some pressure points and there's going to be some litigation probably around it. Like, I mean, we could go again, we've got 15 seconds, but you even look at like the lawsuit that's open against Microsoft and OpenAI on copyright infringement right now.
Yeah.
That lawsuit will likely go up to the Supreme Court, but the outcome of that lawsuit has the potential to have downstream effects on every single large language model that's been
Mhm.
trained on anything that wasn't licensed.
Correct.
That has huge implications.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of them trying to shove the genie back into the bottle and say, no, there's no way that you can use this content, go back to the starting ground and
Mhm.
rewrite your whole algorithm from only licensed content and retrain only from licensed content. It's not a high probability, but there will likely be a massive payout associated with it that changes how we license information and how we train these models. So
Mhm.
we're so close to the beginning of this whole paradigm that
Mhm.
over the next 5 years, we're going to see so much play out. Over the next 10 years, probably 3 times as much play out in terms of these ethical questions and how it shapes our society.
I completely agree with you. In fact, there was something I saw. I want to take a couple more minutes, if that's okay with you, just to kind of
Yeah.
close this part of the conversation. Actually saw OpenAI post for some grants that they're offering, right? Research dollars to PhD students and others who are interested in this space. Where how do you even monitor um, how the algorithms will actually be able to do certain things, right? So they're projecting already that these AI tools are going to be much more smarter than humans, literally in the next decade. So for human oversight by itself is not going to be sufficient. So you'll need to create tools to help humans do that oversight. So they're actually already looking for people to help do research in that space, so that you can actually go and start thinking about how do you even construct those kinds of tools, right?
Mhm.
So to your point, it's going to be in lots of different areas. The one you brought up around like the whole copyright thing, I think that's just one part of it. Bad
Oh,
actors is
yeah.
going to be another one, right? So deep fakes, and then even I would say in the space of how you should think about like synthetic data or synthetic emotions. That's another term I've heard recently as well. So it's like you said, we're still on the early days. We're not even at the end of the beginning yet.
No.
We're still in chapter one, if you want to
And
call
the
it
really crazy part, to put it into
that.
perspective for everyone, is like
Yeah,
most of these tools have been being built since the 50s.
right.
So, like, what
Yeah,
we're seeing isn't happening overnight. And the
yeah,
rest of this isn't going to happen overnight, even though it's exponentially increasing in speed.
yeah.
It's been going on for decades, just not visible to everybody else. And
That's exactly
so
right. Yeah.
we have a long way to go on this journey, and it's probably never going to stop.
No, it's not. And I think you said it best. The genie's out. So,
Hmm.
good luck trying to put it back in. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen, right? So, the question for me has always been: do you want to fight it, or do you want to, influence it in the direction that makes more sense? But trying to
Mhm.
resist it and fight it, I think, is really a losing proposition at the end of the day, in my opinion, at least. My
Yeah.
2 cents. So,
Yeah. And I would say my final note is to think of how you can use it to amplify and add efficiency to you and your authentic self is going to be the best way to leverage tools and your social selling journey as a whole.
yeah.
And if you can get really good at tapping into automating the parts that you don't like or managing the pieces that fit outside of your skill set,
Mhm.
the better you'll be to focus on who you are and uniquely what you can offer to the market.
That's right. That's totally right. So, Emma, as always, thank you again.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not following Emma on LinkedIn or any of the social media platforms, especially TikTok, I would highly recommend that you do. I watch almost all of her videos on TikTok. They're inspirational, entertaining, and educational all in one. So. Please make sure you follow her, and if you aren't following me, follow me too here on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And I talk a lot about AI. I talk a lot about stigma and brands. And these are areas that have become a bit of a passion area for me right now. So, Emma, thank you again. You're always
Thank you for
welcome to the
having
show
me.
anytime, so just let me know when you want to come back. So,
Okay. Will do.
all right. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are